Marcus hadn't slept in 48 hours when the penthouse door swung open at 3 in the morning, and standing there wasn't his boss, it was his 6-year-old daughter, Riley, clutching her stuffed rabbit with tears streaming down her face. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This story begins 3 weeks earlier, when Marcus Chen, a widowed father working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, walked into the gleaming tower of Apex Industries thinking he'd finally caught a break. The job posting promised fair wages, reasonable hours, and respect. What he got instead was a living nightmare dressed in a $10,000 suit. His name was Victor Hastings, a billionaire who'd built his empire on the backs of people he considered beneath him, and from the moment Marcus shook his hand, Victor saw nothing but a tool to be used until it broke. The first week, Marcus worked 70 hours. The second week, 90. By the third week, he was sleeping 3 hours a night on a cot in the office storage room because Victor demanded round-the-clock availability for a merger that would make the billionaire even richer while Marcus struggled to afford his daughter's asthma medication. Every morning, Marcus would FaceTime Riley before she went to school, his eyes red and hollow, promising her he'd be home soon, knowing it was a lie. And every night, his sister Emma would text him photos of Riley crying herself to sleep, asking when Daddy was coming home. But Marcus couldn't quit. He'd burned through his savings during his wife's cancer treatment 2 years ago, and this job, horrible as it was, paid just enough to keep Riley fed and housed. So he endured Victor's insults, the way the billionaire called him, the help, in front of clients, how he'd throw coffee cups when reports weren't formatted exactly right, how he'd schedule midnight video calls just to prove he could. The other executives watched in uncomfortable silence, too afraid of losing their own positions to speak up. And Marcus? Marcus swallowed his pride and kept working because that's what fathers do when their children are counting on them. Then came the breaking point. It was a Friday night, and Marcus had been promised he could leave by 6 to attend Riley's elementary school play. She was playing a sunflower in the spring production, her first performance since her mother died, and she'd been practicing her 2 lines for weeks. Marcus had the costume ironed and hanging in his car. He'd arranged everything perfectly. But at 5:45, Victor strode into the office with a stack of contracts and said 4 words that shattered everything: "You're working all weekend." Marcus felt his heart stop. The office went silent. 6 other employees pretended to be engrossed in their computers, but Marcus could feel their sympathetic stares burning into his back. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and texted Emma, "Can't make it. Tell Riley I'm sorry." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Marcus, you're breaking her heart." But what choice did he have? He stayed. He worked through the night while his phone filled with photos from Emma, Riley in her sunflower costume, beaming before the play, then the photos after, her face streaked with tears, her eyes scanning the audience for a father who wasn't there. By Sunday night, Marcus had been awake for 36 hours straight. His vision was blurring. His hands shook so badly he could barely type. At 2 in the morning, he stood up to get coffee and collapsed, hitting his head on the corner of his desk. He woke up in a pool of his own blood with Victor standing over him, and do you know what the billionaire said? Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Should I call an ambulance?" He said, "Clean that up before the morning shift arrives." Blood stains are unprofessional. Something inside Marcus broke then. Not his body had broken days ago. His spirit. The part of him that believed hard work was rewarded, that decency existed in the world, that suffering in silence was noble. He grabbed paper towels, cleaned his own blood off the floor, finished the contracts with a concussion pounding behind his eyes, and at 6 a.m. Monday morning, he sent them to Victor. Then he drove home, his head throbbing, his soul empty, and found Riley sitting at the kitchen table in her school uniform, eating cereal alone because Emma had already left for her own job. "Daddy," she cried, running to him. But when she hugged him, she pulled back, her small hand touching the dried blood in his hair. "Daddy, you're hurt." By Sunday night, Marcus had been awake for 36 hours straight. His vision was blurring. His hands shook so badly he could barely type. At 2 in the morning, he stood up to get coffee and collapsed, hitting his head on the corner of his desk. He woke up in a pool of his own blood with Victor standing over him, and do you know what the billionaire said? Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Should I call an ambulance?" He said, "Clean that up before the morning shift arrives." Blood stains are unprofessional. Something inside Marcus broke then. Not his body had broken days ago. His spirit. The part of him that believed hard work was rewarded, that decency existed in the world, that suffering in silence was noble. He grabbed paper towels, cleaned his own blood off the floor, finished the contracts with a concussion pounding behind his eyes, and at 6 a.m. Monday morning, he sent them to Victor. Then he drove home, his head throbbing, his soul empty, and found Riley sitting at the kitchen table in her school uniform, eating cereal alone because Emma had already left for her own job. "Daddy," she cried, running to him. But when she hugged him, she pulled back, her small hand touching the dried blood in his hair. "Daddy, you're hurt." "I'm okay, sweetheart," he lied, but they both knew it wasn't true. That night, after putting Riley to bed, Marcus sat in the darkness of his tiny apartment and made a decision. He would quit. He'd find another job, any job, even if it meant working fast food again. He'd burn through his dignity for nothing because men like Victor Hastings didn't respect sacrifice, they only respected power. But before he could type his resignation email, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Marcus Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Sarah Hastings. I'm Victor's mother. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, Marcus was sitting in an all-night diner across from an elegant woman in her 70s who looked nothing like her cruel son. "I know what Victor's been doing to you," she said quietly. "One of the night cleaning staff told me they found blood on your desk. I asked around. I heard the stories." Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, fixed on him. "My son has become something I don't recognize. His father and I built that company on treating people with dignity. Victor's turned it into something ugly. And I'm done watching him destroy lives." Marcus didn't understand. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Sarah said, sliding a business card across the table, "I still own 48% of Apex Industries. Victor controls 51%. But there's a clause in the company charter that allows me to call for a vote of no confidence if I can prove executive misconduct. I need someone willing to testify. I need someone brave enough to stand up. I need you." Marcus stared at the card. "He'll destroy me. He'll make sure I never work again." "Probably," Sarah agreed. "That's why I'm offering you a choice. Walk away, and I'll personally ensure you get a recommendation and 6-month severance. Or stay, testify, and help me remove him from power. If we win, you'll be named VP of Operations with a salary that'll let you give your daughter the life she deserves. If we lose." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Marcus thought of Riley crying in her sunflower costume. He thought of his wife, who'd always told him to stand up for what was right. He thought of all the other people Victor would torture if no one stopped him. And he made his choice. "I'll testify." The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Sarah moved fast, calling an emergency board meeting, gathering evidence, deposing other employees who'd suffered under Victor's reign. Marcus documented everything, the 100-hour weeks, the verbal abuse, the medical neglect. His hands shook as he compiled the evidence, knowing that in 72 hours, he'd face Victor in front of the entire board of directors. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday at noon. Marcus put on his only good suit, kissed Riley goodbye, and walked into that conference room with his heart hammering. Victor was already there, radiating confidence, smirking when he saw Marcus. "Come to beg for your job back," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. But then Sarah walked in, and Victor's smirk died. "Mother? What are you doing here?" "Taking out the trash," she said coldly. For 2 hours, Marcus testified. He showed the emails Victor sent at 3 a.m. demanding immediate responses. He showed the medical bills from his concussion. He read text messages from other employees too terrified to come forward themselves. And slowly, the board's expressions changed from skeptical to horrified. Victor tried to spin it, claiming Marcus was a disgruntled employee, that business required sacrifice, that winners did whatever it took. But then Sarah dropped the final bomb, security footage of Victor literally stepping over Marcus's unconscious body to check his watch, more concerned about time than a human being bleeding on the floor. The vote wasn't even close. 14-3. Victor Hastings was removed as CEO effective immediately. As security escorted him out, he locked eyes with Marcus and hissed, "You'll regret this." But Marcus didn't feel regret. He felt free. That night, Marcus went home to Riley, picked her up, and spun her around the kitchen. "Daddy, what happened?" she asked, giggling. "Did you win?" "We won, sweetheart," he said, tears streaming down his face. "We won." And when Sarah called him the next morning to officially offer him the VP position with a salary that made his breath catch, he thought about all the future Marcuses out there, the ones still trapped, still suffering, still believing they had no choice. His first act as VP would be implementing a strict 40-hour workweek policy and doubling the pay for all non-executive staff. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the stage at Riley's school award ceremony, watching her accept the citizenship award for always being kind even when others aren't. She'd written an essay about her daddy, about how he taught her that doing the right thing is hard but necessary. As she read it aloud, her small voice clear and proud, Marcus caught Sarah's eye in the audience. She'd become Riley's honorary grandmother, and she was beaming. Victor had tried suing for wrongful termination, but the case was dismissed within weeks. He'd started another company, but word spread fast about what kind of man he was, and he couldn't keep employees longer than a month. That night, tucking Riley into bed, she looked up at Marcus and asked, "Daddy, why did that mean man try to hurt you?" And Marcus, stroking her hair, said, "Some people think power means crushing others. But real power? Real power is standing back up after being knocked down. Real power is protecting the people who can't protect themselves. Real power is knowing that how you treat people when you have all the control says everything about who you really are." Riley thought about this, then smiled. "You have real power, Daddy." And Marcus, thinking about the midnight phone call that changed everything, about the elderly woman who refused to let cruelty win, about the choice he made to risk everything for what was right, pulled his daughter close and whispered, "No, sweetheart. We do. We all do. We just have to be brave enough to use it."